All right, welcome to the deep dive, everybody. College, it's a huge step, right?
It is.
And we've all either been there ourselves or know someone who has. But how do students actually adapt to this, like this massive shift in their lives?
It's a fascinating question, and we're going to dive deep into the research today to bring you the real nitty-gritty of it all. The kind of insights that'll make you feel like you've earned a PhD in college adjustment without, having to spend years in the library.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking shortcuts to knowledge here, folks. And the good news is we've got a seriously robust study to work with. A meta-analysis, actually, by these researchers, Crede and Niehorster, published back in 2012.
Okay, meta-analysis. Sounds intimidating. But can you break that down for us? Like, what does that actually mean in plain English?
Well, think of it this way. Instead of just doing one study with, say, a couple hundred students, they combined the results of a whopping 231 different studies. That's a combined sample size of over 44,000 students.
Whoa, 44,000. That's like a small city worth of college experiences all rolled into one. Right. So we're not dealing with just a small snapshot here. We're talking about big picture, statistically sound conclusions drawn from a massive pool of data.
Love it. So our mission today, should you choose to accept it, is to unpack exactly what this adjustment to college thing looks like, what factors influence how smoothly it goes, and why it even matters for things like academic success and actually finishing your degree. We're going to break it down for you, make it clear, and most importantly, keep it interesting.
Absolutely. And before we get too far, we need to be clear about one thing. We're focusing specifically on the challenges of adapting to the college environment itself.
Gotcha.
Not pre-existing mental health issues or anything like that. It's about the unique hurdles of this new world of higher education.
Exactly. The researchers are super clear about this. It's adjustment to college, not just the adjustment of college students. Two different beasts, and we're all about that initial adaptation process. How do you handle the academics, the social scene, the whole new personal and even institutional landscape? That's where we're focusing our deep dive.
Okay, so let's get into it. When we talk about adjustment, are we talking about one single thing here? Or is it more nuanced than that?
Great question. It's definitely not just a simple yes or no situation, right?
Right.
Based on earlier work by these guys, Baker and Sirik, college adjustment is actually multidimensional. Like, it's got layers. There are four key areas to consider.
So it's not just about feeling settled or unsettled. It's about how you're adapting in several specific areas.
Exactly. And the first one is academic adjustment. Pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yeah, it's all about how well students adapt to the academic side of things. Their attitude towards studies, engagement with the material, how their study skills hold up in this new environment. It's all in there.
Makes sense. You could be the most popular person on campus, but if you're drowning in readings and assignments, you're not exactly adjusted.
All right. Nope, not quite. And that brings us to the second area, social adjustment. This is all about fitting into the social fabric of college life. Joining clubs, making friends, dealing with being away from family, all the social dynamics come into play.
Yeah, especially for those who are leaving home for the first time, it's a huge change.
Yeah.
But what else is part of this adjustment puzzle?
Well, the third piece is personal emotional adjustment. This is the emotional roller coaster, right? The stress, the anxiety, maybe even physical stuff like sleep problems that come with the territory. It's about how you're holding up mentally and emotionally under pressure.
So it's not just about logistics, it's about the internal stuff too. How do you cope with the ups and downs of college life? And there's one more piece, right? What's that fourth key area?
It's institutional attachment, and this one's interesting. It's about how much a student identifies with and feels connected to the university itself.
So like school spirit, a sense of belonging.
Exactly. Do they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves? Do they feel any pride or loyalty towards the institution? That's what institutional attachment is all about.
Fascinating. Okay, now, the research mentions something called the SACQ, the Student Adaptation to College Questionnaire. What's that all about?
Ah, the SACQ. This is the gold standard, the tool that researchers use to measure these four dimensions of college adjustment. Baker and Sirik developed it, and the meta-analysis points out that while its initial design wasn't perfect, the SACQ's overall structure has proven to be pretty solid. So a lot of the studies they reviewed used the SACQ to get a handle on how students were adapting.
Okay, so they had all this data from the SACQ. What did they find about how these four areas relate to each other? Are they totally independent? or do they tend to go hand in hand?
Well, there are definitely strong links between them. For example, you're more likely to feel attached to your university if you're thriving socially, and researchers often look at overall adjustment, which combines all four areas into one score.
Makes sense.
But the important takeaway here is that they are distinct aspects. Just because you're killing it in one area doesn't mean you're sailing through the others. You might be a social butterfly, but still struggling academically, or vice versa.
Right. You could be super involved in campus life and still feel homesick or stressed out.
Exactly. And even closely related areas can predict different outcomes down the line.
Okay, so we've got the four key pieces of the puzzle. Now, what influences how well students adjust in these different areas? What are the things that come before or happen alongside this whole process?
This is where it gets juicy. The research dives into 8 broad categories of influences, and they're not always what you'd expect.
Tate. Okay, let's break those down one by one. What's the first category?
First up, demographic characteristics. Think age, ethnicity, gender, disability status, socioeconomic background, whether they're a first-generation college student, even family stuff like divorce history. All those factors are in this category.
You often hear about the unique challenges faced by students from different backgrounds. What do they find?
This is where it gets interesting. The relationships between these demographic factors and overall college adjustment were generally pretty weak.
Really?
Yeah, while some studies have focused on specific challenges for minority students and the role of support systems, this massive meta-analysis showed a surprisingly weak overall impact from demographics alone.
So, being a first-gen student or coming from a low-income family doesn't necessarily doom you to a rough adjustment.
That's what the data suggests. It's not as straightforward as you might think. Other factors, like support networks, might play a bigger role, but the direct link between demographics and adjustment was surprisingly weak.
Huh, that's worth noting. Okay, what's the next category?
Next up, prior achievement. We're talking high school GPA, SAT scores, that kind of stuff.
You'd think good grades and high test scores would set you up for a smooth transition, right? Like you've already proven you can handle academics.
Logically, yes. But here's another shocker. The meta-analysis actually found weak links between prior achievement and overall college adjustment. Even academic adjustment wasn't strongly predicted by past performance.
So all that hard work in high school doesn't necessarily translate to an easy ride in college.
That's the takeaway. While the researchers thought things like cognitive ability and strong academic skills would be helpful, the correlations were surprisingly weak.
That's pretty counterintuitive. All right, what about experiences during college? What kind of impact did those have?
Yeah, that's category number 3, experiences at college. We're talking orientation programs, negative stuff like bullying, and also things like alcohol and substance abuse.
You'd hope those orientation programs would be helpful. Colleges put a lot of effort into them.
You'd think so, right? But the research on orientation showed only weak positive effects on adjustment. On the flip side, negative experiences and substance abuse showed stronger negative relationships, especially with academic adjustment. Though it's probably a two-way street with substance use. Struggling to adjust might lead to more partying, and vice versa.
Yeah, a vicious cycle. Okay, what's next on the list of influences?
Category 4 is core self-evaluations and traits. This is where personality comes into play.
Okay, tell me more about that. What kind of traits matter?
Think about basic personality stuff. How outgoing you are, how agreeable and cooperative you are, how open you are to new experiences, and your overall emotional stability. These traits tend to make adjustments smoother.
Intuitively, that makes sense.
And for academic adjustment specifically, conscientiousness, being organized and disciplined, was a strong predictor.
Makes sense. If you're good at managing your time and staying on top of things, college is probably a little less chaotic.
Exactly. And they also looked at core self-evaluations. This is your self-esteem, your sense of control over your life, and your belief in your ability to succeed. And all three were strongly linked to positive adjustment across the board. So how you see yourself really matters.
So it's not just about being smart. It's about believing in yourself and feeling capable. What's next?
Category 5 is state and trait effect, which basically means your emotional state and your typical emotional tendencies. We're talking things like depression, loneliness, stress, even interpersonal guilt.
Seems pretty obvious that negative emotions would make adjusting harder.
You're right. They found strong negative correlations there. Depression was linked to struggles with personal emotional adjustment, stress to overall adjustment difficulties. It makes sense if you're already feeling down or anxious. College life is probably going to amplify those feelings.
Makes sense. Okay, what's the next category?
This one is coping style. How do students deal with the inevitable stress and challenges of college?
Are some coping styles more helpful than others?
Turns out, yes. Problem-focused coping, where you actively try to address the problem head-on, was generally helpful. But emotion-focused coping, especially avoidance strategies like trying to ignore the problem, was linked to more difficulties.
So facing your problems head on is better than burying your head in the sand. Not exactly groundbreaking, but good to know it's backed by research.
Right. And seeking social support was also generally a good coping strategy.
Reach out to your people.
Yeah.
Got it. What else did they look at?
Category 7 is social support, the impact of having a supportive network. Parents, family, friends, even faculty and staff at the university.
That seems crucial. Having people you can rely on must make a huge difference.
Definitely. Having social support from any of those sources was linked to better adjustment overall. But what's cool is that different sources of support seem to matter more for different areas. Institutional support, like feeling supported by faculty, was more strongly tied to academic adjustment and institutional attachment.
Makes sense. Feeling connected to the university itself would probably make you feel more academically supported.
Right. And peer support was more strongly linked to, you guessed it, social adjustment.
So different types of support for different needs. What's the final category?
Last but not least, category 8, relationship with parents. How does the parent-child dynamic, even after leaving home, affect college adjustment?
That's an interesting one. You're out of the house, but your relationship with your parents probably still matters, right?
Absolutely. And the research found that secure attachment to parents and feeling that they've encouraged your autonomy were both positively related to adjustment. Basically, having a healthy, supportive relationship where you also feel empowered to be independent is a good thing.
Healthy boundaries and mutual respect.
Got it.
Got it. Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground about what influences adjustment, but now let's talk about why it matters. What are the actual outcomes of adjusting well or poorly?
Well, good adjustment isn't just about feeling happy and settled. It actually predicts some major educational outcomes. And the first one is college grades, your GPA.
So how does your level of adjustment affect your academic performance?
Academic adjustment was the strongest predictor of both first-year GPA and overall college GPA. The other types of adjustment had smaller, what they call spillover effects on grades.
So if you're struggling to adapt academically, your grades are likely to reflect that.
Pretty much. And get this, the predictive power of academic adjustment was comparable to traditional measures like SAT scores and high school GPA.
Wow, so how you adapt to the academic demands of college is just as important as your past academic record.
It is. But they did note that this relationship weakens over time. The longer the gap between when adjustment was measured and when GPA was looked at, the less strong the link.
Makes sense. What's the other major outcome they looked at?
College retention, whether students stay enrolled and actually finish their degrees.
Huge issue for universities.
Yeah.
And probably a big source of stress for students and their families. How does adjustment factor into all of that?
Institutional attachment, that feeling of belonging, was the strongest predictor of retention. Makes sense, right? If you feel connected to the university, you're more likely to stay. Social and academic adjustment also predicted retention, though to a lesser extent, and then personal emotional adjustment. And these relationships were consistent across a lot of studies, which is a good sign that they're pretty reliable.
So feeling like you belong, doing well academically, and having a good social experience all contribute to staying the course.
Exactly. And this aligns with a lot of what we know about why students drop out. Feeling isolated, struggling academically, not feeling connected to the campus community, those are all risk factors.
Right. They also briefly mentioned using counseling services as an outcome. What did they find there?
They found a link between lower personal emotional adjustment and seeking counseling, which makes sense. If you're struggling emotionally, you're more likely to reach out for help.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to seek support when you need it. Now, they mentioned something called incremental validity. Can you explain what that means?
Incremental validity is about whether knowing about a student's adjustment adds any extra information beyond what we already know from traditional stuff like high school GPA and test scores. Like, does it give us a more complete picture?
So even if we know how they did in high school, does knowing how they're adapting to college tell us something new about their likelihood of success?
Exactly. And the answer is yes, it does. They found that college adjustment significantly improves our ability to predict both GPA and retention above and beyond what we can predict from past academic performance alone. Specifically, academic adjustment was the biggest predictor of GPA, and institutional attachment was the biggest predictor of retention.
Wow, so even if you aced high school, how well you're adapting academically in college gives us a better idea of how you'll do in your courses. And even with stellar test scores, knowing how connected you feel to the university helps us predict whether you'll stick around.
That's the power of understanding adjustment. It fills in some crucial gaps.
This has been an incredibly insightful look into college adjustment. To wrap things up for everyone listening, what are the big takeaways from this study?
The key points to remember are that college adjustment is multifaceted, with academic, social, personal, emotional, and institutional components. How well you adapt in these areas has a huge impact on your academic performance and whether you stay in college, even more so than your past academic achievements. And things like conscientiousness, positive self-evaluations, good coping skills, and strong support networks all play a role in helping students adjust successfully.
So it's not just about being book smart. It's about a whole bunch of factors that help you thrive in this new environment.
Absolutely. It's a holistic process.
And this brings up an interesting question for everyone out there. Are there aspects of adjustment that we often overlook? Could focusing more on fostering that sense of belonging, that institutional attachment, be a game changer for improving retention rates? What do you think?
That's a question worth pondering for students, parents, and educators alike. Are we doing enough to support students in all these different areas? Are we paying enough attention to the emotional and social aspects of adjustment, not just the academic ones?
Food for thought, for sure. If you're interested in learning more, I encourage you to check out the SACQ, that Student Application to College questionnaire we talked about, or just reflect on your own experiences or those of people you know through the lens of these 4 areas of adjustment.
And there's a wealth of research out there on all these topics, so if anything we've discussed today piqued your interest, go explore. There's always more to learn.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into college adjustment. We'll be back soon with another exploration into the research that helps us understand the world around us. Until then, keep learning and keep growing.
And keep adjusting
That too.
to whatever life throws your way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. See you all next time.
See